When we were growing up, our father farmed probably about 100+ acres in Cape Elizabeth, and we now probably till about 40 to 50 per season. Now, when you think of Cape Elizabeth, you don't always think farm, but I will tell you that Cape Elizabeth is probably one of the most farm-friendly towns you could have around, because the citizens of Cape embrace what the farms have to offer, which is open space, fresh food, and really that rural character that people seek when they move to our community. As we were growing up, we actually lived in what was considered a rural part of Cape Elizabeth. Some people didn't even think we lived in Cape Elizabeth. We were on the Scarborough side of Cape, not that there's anything wrong with Scarborough. But we are on the Scarborough side of Cape Elizabeth, and so a lot of people thought that's where we lived. And it was so rural that when our mom wanted to get us out of the house and get us out of the way, she would say, go sit by the side of the road and count cars. When you count 10 cars, come back, you can come back in. So at one point we said, do we only have to count the cars going one way, or can they be going up the road and down the road? So we tried to kind of negotiate how long we had to stay out of our way. But all of us, my brother and my two sisters and I, we worked on the farm as we were growing up. And it was really, when I think back on it, it was so wonderful, but when you're doing it, it really isn't. So, I mean, we would get out of school in the springtime and we'd get home and we'd see the tractor out in the field and we'd go, damn, we've got to pick rocks. And there's nothing worse than picking rocks after being in school all day. So what I decided to do is join the softball team. That's the way I solved that problem. And when summer vacation started, we'd be, great, exhale, and then probably 5 or 6 days after that, there'd be a knock on the bedroom door and it's time to pick strawberries. So my sisters and I worked with our aunt and a couple others to pick strawberries, and my brother went off to be working with the Puerto Ricans, thinning lettuce, weeding, planting, doing whatever all those guys did during the day, because we were somehow never learned to do that. And so once strawberries were done and we entered the tomato field or planting broccoli or cabbage or cauliflower, but we were always active and we were always doing something. And what was really cool is when our friends started to come and work at the farm with us. And that was such a wonderful summer, the teen years, when you'd work hard all day, you'd sweat all day, and then you'd go jump in the ocean at Kettle Cove. And what more could you ask for? That was a wonderful lifestyle. And so when you think about it, we all grew up, we all enjoyed this, and there's a part of the farm that is so special and so beautiful to all of us. And if any of you have ever been to Cape Elizabeth and have driven Wells Road, there's a farm there that the farmhouse sits up on a hill, and the road kind of creates the barrier to then getting to the fields. And so we got 46 acres of view from the farmhouse down across the fields into the Spurrick River, or people call it a marsh, up through to see the Spurrick Church and the cemetery. And so you see that view every single day. And that view was always very important to us. But it wasn't until I got a bit older and wiser that I really understood what that property could do with us and for us, besides growing food. And that's a view my father saw every day. And what I learned probably when I was in my late 20s is that the town also valued that, because they decided that some citizens got together, a committee, to kind of rate the views in town and to see what the most important vistas were that needed to be protected. And so us kids got a little anxious about it, because we're actually land rights kind of people. We're more Republican than Democrat. And we just said, no, we aren't liking this. But my father said, don't worry, it's fine. Everything will work out. And so as the years went on, and then the 70s and 80s weren't very kind to wholesale farm businesses, and so we too started to transition into more of the retail world. But it still was a tough time, and my dad and my brother stayed on the farm. We did have to sell some of the property in order to keep the farm running. But my sisters and I, we went off to work in the more corporate world. So I worked in corporate America for probably about 20 years. And then I decided to go back to the farm. I actually went to graduate school and back to the farm, and to work alongside my brother and my father so that I could really aggravate my brother all day long. And he's really appreciated it. But what I really did discover when we got back and I'm working with my dad and my brother, and I go, well, we got to build this business, but that takes capital. And my parents were aging, and the business had really stalled out. It had really atrophied in some ways. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is it we're going to do? Because we did not want to sell any more property. And so the awesome thing that happened around that time is that the Cape Elizabeth Land Trust approached us to see if we would be willing to put an agricultural easement on that beautiful view. My father's response was, I'm not giving my land away. So what we suggested to him is that we sell the development rights. He would retain ownership for the property, and his farm would be a farm forever, which was really important to him and to all of us, because we are fourth generation and we have the fifth generation on board as farmers. And so we worked with the Cape Elizabeth Land Trust, and I'm going to do a pitch for Land for Maine Futures, because that was an integral program that allowed us to achieve what we achieved. This was probably in 2001 that we were working on this. So we fast forward 4 years, and we did end up with the agricultural easement, and we achieved the things that my father wanted to achieve, which was to make sure we retained ownership of that property, made sure that we didn't give the farm away, and made sure that his farm would be a farm forever, and make sure the government doesn't get a lot of money. And so those were his criteria. And so in those 4 years, it was, the wonderful thing is, what I kept saying is, I always wondered why I went to work in corporate America, but I learned why I did, because the skills that I brought, that my sister Carol brought to the table in order to achieve what we achieved were important. And so people kept telling us that when you sell your development rights, you have to price it as if you're selling to a developer. And I go, why? I know how to do a development. I can do anything. And so basically what we did is what people told us we couldn't do. And so we did all of the research, we did all of the analysis, we put together the proposal, we determined what we thought, we felt that our land was worth. We then were told that there was an assessor that needed to come and tell us that what it really was worth. And I go, well, I'll just tell them what the right answer is. It's pretty simple. And so it did work out, and everything worked out. And during that same time, you're not only working on getting this, the development rights sold, you're also doing estate planning. And estate planning, if you've never done it, is really an interesting exercise, because we're sitting around the table with my dad's lawyer talking about what are we going to do with this land, what's going to happen, and we're talking about our parents dying. And so when Dad dies, this is going to happen, when Mom dies, blah, 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 blah. So we're going through all these scenarios, and my father says to his lawyer, hey, Bob, what happens if I outlive them all? And we all look at him like, only Dad would say that. But he was right. You got to think of that scenario. So when I think about all that we achieved around this beautiful piece of land, this beautiful view that is so important, I think about the fact that we did sell those development rights, that we were able to raise capital to build the business, that Dad was able to get a new pickup truck and a new lawnmower, which was really important to him. And my mom got care as she was failing, and a really important thing, and this is what we think about every day when we step on the soil, is that we aren't just doing this for ourselves, we're doing it for the community. And so the community that loves this view as much as we do, now will get to enjoy this view for perpetuity, which I learned was a really long time. And so, the story goes on and about this view, and it was 2005, and my dad was in the hospital, and he had been there for several weeks. And the nurses go, "Doesn't he have any hobbies?" And I go, "Yeah, politics and farming." Now, I brought him all his magazines, he's got his newspapers, he's got the news on, you can talk politics with him all day long, and I can't fit his tractor through the door. So I really don't think we got any options here. And so then I said, what is it that Dad would want to do in the hospital? And so I decided I'd bring him a picture. So I took off the wall in his living room a picture of the view that he looked at every single day. And so I brought it into his hospital room, and I said, the nurses want you to have a hobby, so I brought this, because I know this is what your hobby is. And he looked at that picture and he said, pretty special, isn't it? And I go, yeah. And so this, I said, can be your conversation piece, and you can tell everybody about the farm and your beautiful farm. And he thought that was really important. And I think it was a few weeks later, he had passed, and so we were at the cemetery, which he looked at from his living room every day. And the person from the town hall was telling us about when he came to buy his cemetery lot. And she said it was really funny because he said exactly the one he wanted and why he wanted it. Because it's total opposite view from his living room to where he is buried. And so we're all standing there at the cemetery going, you can look in the living room. This is but we're looking across, and the reason that he wanted that, she said, is because he wanted to look out over the farm and make sure we were doing everything right. And so each day when I drive down over this hill and I look across that view and I look over at the cemetery, I think of many things. And one of them is our gift to the community. Another is our gift to our family. And the other is I look and I go, are we doing it right? Because that's what I want to know. So.